Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Pull my hair back. I don't know what's going on with that in my there. Okay. Good afternoon. We'll give everyone time to log on. Hello, hi there. How are you, IG? How are you, Chicago? How are you? How are you? Thank you for joining. We're going to get started in just a second. Today we're going to be talking about complex trauma. If you are on, hi Yolanda. How are you? Thank you so much for joining. If you are on, hit that share button. Tag somebody on in. If you're on IG, let them know that we are live. Hey, 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 my friend. How are you guys on this afternoon? Of course, you know, as always, we're not going to be live long. Let me take these off. Can you guys hear me well? I'm going to take those off so that I can be heard pretty good. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so I got a little confession to make. If you are on my subscriber list, then thank you for sharing. Kayla May, thank you so much for sharing the video. I just got the notification that you shared. Thank you for sharing. If you're on here, hit share. If you are joining us from YouTube, you can still hit that share, hit the share icon below, go to one of your social media profiles and post a link there. That is how you can share. Thank you so much for joining on today. I got a little confession because y'all know, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm going to be transparent because I don't know no other way to be. Like, I just don't know no other way to be. So yesterday we talked about, y'all, I don't even remember what we talked about yesterday. I think it was mental health benefits of being in a relationship or a healthy relationship. Good topic, right? I mean, good topic. Excellent topic. So if you're looking at, is my relationship healthy? Go back and check that out. It was a really good topic. So I finished it or whatever. And I just felt so bad. Like, oh my goodness. I felt like I left off so many pieces. Y'all know we can be our worst critics. Like we can be our worst critics. So I finished it and was like, something's just not right. Like I just don't feel like it was, my best. And, I'm being, critical about about the live and all this. And so I started going back, checking my messages, because y'all remember sometimes I miss your messages when we live. So I go back and check the message in the comments and all that stuff. And I got a comment. Actually, it was a message from someone that says, I need help. I'm like, oh my goodness. Now, as a therapist, when I get a message from somebody saying I need help, like it's like, that's my antennas go off. So I'm like, okay, somebody said they need help. Let's figure out what's going on. And the message begins to really I don't want to say touch my heart, because the person really was going through some things that they needed some assistance on, and I was able to have conversation with them in Messenger. So thank you for reaching out to that person who reached out, and people reach out to me all the time. So thank you for trusting me with your stories. But I said all that to say this. So I began to sit with it for a little bit and figure out, well, what is going on? And I just felt the leading to say this or to focus on something a little bit different. And it really convicted me because the title of our midday lives that we do is Hard Life Topics, right? Hard life topics with simple solutions. That's the whole reason why we're here. We do what we do. Thank you for confirming that we're loud and clear. Thank you for that. It's the whole reason why we do what we do, right? And so I was like, oh my goodness. The reason why I felt so bad about the topic was not the topic. The content in it was accurate. It was still good and it still would help somebody. I just believe that. But it was the fact that I was comfortable. I was comfortable. I was talking about a topic that was comfortable. And in today's world, people don't need comfortable. Like we get comfortable everywhere, right? We get comfortable everywhere. We get people talking about health, this and that, and just throwing content and throwing stuff at us that's kind of surface level. We get that everywhere. But what we don't see It's people talking about the hard topics. And that's why I purely, solely exist, is to talk about the hard topics. I am equipped to talk about hard topics, to handle hard situations. That's how I'm built. I didn't go through what I went through for a reason. I've gone through a lot in my life, and really have overcome a lot in my life through the grace of God. And so I don't exist to just talk about what's easy. I'm sorry. If you're here to talk about what's easy, you're in the wrong spot. You log off now and share it before you go, so somebody who really needs to talk about some hard stuff and deal with some real life issues can get to the information. Okay. So today, thank you for that person that messaged me on yesterday. We're going to be talking about complex trauma. And if you do not know what complex trauma is, you want to stick around, because hopefully by the end of this, you will know exactly what complex trauma is and whether or not you yourself are dealing with some complex trauma. And there's the difference between trauma and complex trauma. And so I hope you'll be able to see that on today. So for those who don't know who I am Dr. Tiffany Ross. I am a trained therapist, marriage and family therapist, and I am also a relationship expert. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on IG, which we're IG and Facebook Live on today. At any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to message me. And we work specifically with women who are healing and recovering from relationship trauma. And when I say relationship trauma, that means that they have been through some kind of traumatic relationship breakup, divorce. It can even be transitions. It can be grief. They've gone through some things in their past or currently, and they just need some support in. And so that's what we do. We work with those women who are in the recovery phase, help bringing them or giving them the support that they need in order to cross over into just walking fully in healing. And so, complex trauma. Y'all ready? If you're ready, shoot me some likes, shoot me some thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, just say you're ready. Let me know that you are ready. Let me know that you're ready. Okay. Complex trauma. So I had to pull out the research on this one, which I always do. Like, I'm always researching anyway. Like, it's what I do. I don't just throw content. I go back and actually research. So complex trauma. Complex trauma, I went back, I think it was Psychology Today, maybe is where I found this information at, and talking about complex trauma. Because it's not a whole lot of, I was like, there's not a lot of information about this, but people are dealing with complex trauma all over the place. And we know that because you sit down and talk to people and you hear their stories. You hear that they have gone through a lot in their life. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, this ain't just the regulars. This is something deeper than that. So, there was an article by a professor named Courtois. I can't even pronounce it right because it's some kind of French name. But you'll find it there, some Psychology Today, and I can post that article inside of our on our profile. We can post it. The article, if you need it, you can message me. I'll give it to you. Hey, Kingdom Finances. Hi from Michigan. Hi. So let me know if you want the article. I'll feel free to share the article. So, understanding complex trauma, complex reactions, and treatment approaches is the name of the article. So she talks about complex trauma as being a series of traumatic events and experiences, and and she lists like some stressors and some things that are clearly marked whether or not it's complex trauma. So let me stop here because I think I just said a lot. So when we're talking about complex trauma, it's not just one experience or one isolated incident in what we would say in therapists, which means that it's not just one time that something happened to you, but we're talking about a collection of things that have happened over time, or one thing that has happened over a period of time. So take someone that may have been sexually abused. They weren't just sexually abused one time, but they've been sexually abused multiple times. And that multiple times could be by the same person. So it's called repetitive. So it's happened repetitively. It's happened over a prolonged period of time, and it can be cumulative. So we can have this person being sexually abused this one time, and then maybe 3 years later, someone else or the same person, and then, another time, then they've experienced, they may be experiencing poverty over a long period of time, because poverty can also be traumatic. And then on top of that, they may have had some other experience where they may have grew up in a domestic violent household. So now we see where the trauma is starting to layer on top of things. And when that person is sitting before a therapist, they may present one particular incident. And the therapist may not know that, oh my goodness, this person has more than one particular incident that we're dealing with. And as a therapist, as you know, hopefully you're working with a therapist. Hopefully we'll get to that too, about how you can go about the healing process for that later on. So stick around. But hopefully the therapist is really skilled in doing the work and really labeling or getting to the root of where some of these behaviors are coming from a person, so that they can deal with the traumas and not just the trauma. So, okay, so repetitive, prolonged, and cumulative. So it's happened over a long period of time or a prolonged period of time. And then she says this, that is most often interpersonal, which we know that, trauma happens, car accident, war victims, veterans. Like we know trauma can happen in those instances. But sometimes or most of the times with complex trauma, it usually involves other people. Most of the time it involves other people. So it also involves direct harm. So we can see, y'all know that we can be impacted. Like I know we share things all across social media. Not long ago, a young lady died by suicide. Excuse me if that's triggering. I probably should have gave that trigger warning before. I should probably always give trigger warnings when I'm talking, because I'm going to talk about hard stuff. But a young lady, there was videos flown all around social media of her last moments of death. Or last moments of life. And it was triggering. We could be impacted by that kind of stuff, even if we weren't there. But that's not the case for complex trauma. For complex trauma, it involves some kind of direct harm. So you were or you were there participant or a participant, or it was happening to you, or you were there observing it directly. It's direct harm with complex trauma. And she says this, it also involves exploitation and maltreatment and neglect and abandonment. And it's usually by primary caregivers or adults that have some kind of, that should be protecting us. Let's just say it like that. By adults that should be looking out for us, by adults that should be protecting, that should be making sure that we're in safe environments. It doesn't always have to be a parent, because I wasn't raised by my parents. I was adopted. So whoever your primary caregiver was or is, they should have been providing some level of safety and care for you, but they didn't. And as a result of that, you are now dealing with some residual effects from that. So here's the third thing that she says, is that it often comes about or happens during the most vulnerable times of our lives. Okay, so what is the most vulnerable times of our lives? Usually when we're children. That's when we're the most impacted. That's when we're the most impressionable. That's when we need the most protection, is when we are children, when during our adolescence, when we're kind of looking for other people to, we need other people, the people that supposed to guide and care for us. We need them to have provisions or make some kind of provisions for us. So it usually occurs during the most vulnerable times, although it can occur at other times in your life and later times, and in different relationships depending on the situation. It can occur in later times, but most often it occurs during the most vulnerable times of your life, which is childhood. So what are some symptoms? What are some things that we need to look for as to whether or not what we're dealing with is complex trauma? I'm pretty sure by now you're probably looking back and like, okay, well, what has happened? I know I may be dealing with some stuff. I know my heart just don't feel settled. Like we kind of know when we're not, when we need some things, we kind of know, like our body lets us know. We know, like our relationships around us let us know. Our life lets us know that we got some things that we need to do. We kind of know. So, but what are some symptoms that we need to look for? Difficulty regulating impulses. What is that? I mean, you're like, what is this girl talking about? Okay, difficulty regulating affective impulses. So I'm talking about things like your emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment. Like you have a difficulty being able to regulate your feelings. So you may get upset, but you don't just get upset. You go from 0 to 10, or you go from 0 to blackout. So you have difficulty regulating that. And for people who may not be dealing with trauma, they may look at a situation and say, okay, I can see solutions. Like, I can figure out how to do this. We can problem solve. We can sit down and we can work through this. But for people who have some trauma or some complex trauma, because that's what we're talking about, they may not know how to regulate those symptoms. They may not know how to regulate their emotions. They actually may depend on other things or people to help regulate their emotions. So now we're talking about addiction. We're talking about alcohol abuse, drug use. We're talking about promiscuity. We're talking about all of these things that people use to cope that are not healthy. Then she goes on to say, self-destructiveness is one of those things that we see when someone is dealing with complex trauma. Yes, self-destructiveness is what we see. And what is self-destructive? Now, I know we've heard of people going into self-destructive mode. I have to pause and be transparent because I know exactly what the self-destructive mode is. I had a lot of complex trauma in my life happen, and I literally went into self-destruct mode. Self-destruct mode means you no longer care about anything and how the outcome of your life. You just do what you feel, you react how you want to react, like you kind of reacting off your emotions. Remember, because we can't regulate, you may have difficulty regulating your emotions. And so self-destructing is just is a nice way of saying I don't care about my life. I don't care about the outcomes of my life or how it, my life is hopeless anyway. So, I mean, no one else around me that should have cared about it didn't care about my life. So why should I care about my life? So a lot of people go into self-destruct mode, and we label these people because we don't have any knowledge of what complex trauma is, and we don't have any knowledge of who the people are. We'll see them and we'll kind of ostracize them. Like, we'll talk about them, or we'll say little things like she crazy, she this and he that and that. We'll label them, not knowing that their behaviors are really crying out for help. They're really crying out for help. So another thing, and I got a long list, so let me hurry up. So another thing she talks about is dissociative episodes. Now, dissociative episodes means that they have period of times where they just black out. And I've worked with clients and know people who don't remember whole portions of their life. Like, they don't remember. It's not I'm just selectively, forgetting, or no, they do not remember portions of their life. This is a dissociative episode. Or even when they're triggered, or something around them is triggering them, or people are triggering them, or they are triggered by something. Their response is to literally cut off emotion. And you may be in a relationship with somebody and you like, wait a minute, why this person don't know how to handle stress, and why this person, or why they just going out to themselves, and why are they engaging in behaviors that cause them to be shut off from me. I love them, I want to be there, and they emotionally they cannot be there because they have trained, or I'm not so much trained. Let's not say trained, because trained you can't, no. Let's not say trained. They have learned because of their trauma that the way they can cope and get through life is to emotionally shut off and not be present. And we see this a lot sometimes with victims who have gone through some type of abuse. And I'm thinking particularly like, sexual abuse. And I say that because I'm a sexual abuse survivor, that they can engage in the act of intimacy, because I don't want to be censored on here. They can engage in the act of intimacy, but be somewhere else, because through experiencing, or their past experience of being abused or sexually abused or violated, or or assaulted, they have, the way they got through that is to literally shut down, shut off, shut their body off, and go on autopilot. So I can be looking at you and still not be present. Another thing, and I'm gonna go through the rest of these really, fast. And if I feel like I need to stop and explain, I will do that. She says, chronic sense of guilt or responsibility for other people, usually, or always feeling guilty about saying yes, or guilty about saying no, or guilty about even being alive, guilty, just this chronic sense of being guilty, difficulty trusting people, or even even being vulnerable with people. They may struggle with being vulnerable with people because they don't trust. And vulnerability requires that you have a level of trust with the person that you are being vulnerable with. You have to trust that that person is not going to take what you're giving them and use it against you. And for people who are dealing with trauma and complex trauma, they may not be able to do that, especially without intervention. They may not be able to fully become vulnerable with you, or you may see little spouts of vulnerability and then they go back into their shell. Another sign or symptom is hopelessness or despair. And then she goes into talking about, like, the medical problems, because we do know, if you do not know, go research it. Trauma can live in your body. So sometimes, people go to the doctor and they're having all these kind of symptoms, and the doctor can't find what in the world, where these symptoms come from. There is no medical reason why you have this symptom. It could be because you have some trauma stuff that has not been worked through, and trauma will live in your body. It absolutely will live in your body. So go research that. Trauma will live in your body. And I may do a live on that and about how trauma lives in your body. And I know there are books. I can't think of the book that I'm thinking about. But there's a book that I've heard was really good. I need to read it myself. But it talks about how trauma lives in your body. Okay, and then the last one that we want to talk about in terms of symptoms is that the person may start to identify with the person who hurt them. So they may feel protective over the person, or they may feel this obligation to not speak ill of this person, or even they may take on this person's viewpoint. So in therapy, when people are talking critical about themselves, because people do, and if we're real honest, sometimes we say things about ourselves in our head that never come out of our mouth, but it does come out sometimes in our actions. So we start talking about our inner voice. What is your inner voice? In therapy, we'll sit down with clients and we'll say, well, whose voice is that you hear? Especially when clients, and I've seen clients that'll go off and they're, beating up on themselves for saying or doing certain things or acting a certain way. Like they're doing this, and I'll say, well, whose voice is that you hear? Is that your abuser's voice, or is that your voice? Is that your mother's voice, or is that your voice? But for people who have gone through trauma, sometimes the voices that they hear are not their own. And when I say the voices that they hear, I'm not talking about like hearing voices from, no, I'm talking about our inner critic, our inner voice. Sometimes our inner voice is not our own. Sometimes it could be your abuser, or where the source of where your trauma comes from. So why are we talking about this? Like, what is the point of talking about this? Number one, I feel like you need to be aware of, okay, now I see I have some symptoms. Well, now what do I do with it? How do I know? What is this awareness going to do now that I know that, I'm kind of evaluating myself as I go along? Knowing what you are dealing with is key to healing. It is absolutely key to healing. And what knowing these things, or knowing your symptoms and all that, knowing these things does is help you connect your symptoms with your past experiences or current. But it helps you make that connection. And once you're able to make that connection, then you're able to see, okay, well, this, now I'm start looking at some things that triggers me. And you're not wondering, or you're not wondering, well, why am I, this is, why do I behave the way I behave, and just count it to, well, it's just who I am. No, something happened to you. It's not always this is just who I am. Sometimes it's something happened to you. And the purpose of us doing this is so that you're able to make that connection. So what do you do when you make that connection? Yes, I do think, I have several things that have happened to me in the past. Then I would advise you that this is the time where you start reaching out to a therapist, a counselor. If you have insurance, the most insurances have EAP programs. But don't just look for any therapist. Look for someone who is skilled in working with victims of trauma. And then that's one thing that I want to advise you. And then the second thing I want to advise you is to be honest. Because what I noticed, and I've had clients to come to me, even coaching clients that would say, well, I never talked about this with my therapist, or I never felt safe enough to talk about this with my therapist. If you are working with a therapist that you are unable to reveal, hey, these are the things that have happened to me in my past, then you need another therapist. Because you should feel safe with the person that you're trusting to help heal you. So be willing, take some time, now to kind of evaluate, but be willing to be open about your experiences with your therapist. Pick the right one so that you can feel safe. So that was all that I had in terms of complex. And I think we may have we went over a lot today. And it's okay. It's absolutely okay. I'm more concerned about people getting the information than I am about adhering to a time. So at the bottom, if you are on Facebook, you will see that I put my scheduling link at the bottom of there. I am offering free discovery calls. If you are on IG, you will find that link either in my description. It's a website link. You can click on that website link and you can schedule from there, or you can just click the schedule now button and schedule for a free 30-minute discovery call. If you are on YouTube, look in the description. You will find how to work with us inside of the description. Schedule a 30-minute discovery call. Does that mean that we're going to work together? Absolutely not. What that means is that I will help direct you where you need to go. I do not do therapy and trauma. That's not what I do. I'm not your therapist. I am a coach. There's a difference. But coaches and therapists can work collectively. So if you are dealing with complex trauma, I can validate your experience. I can help you understand what your next steps will be and how to help get you to your next steps. But I will not be your therapist, because that's not the role that I will play in dealing with complex trauma, because it requires a lot of other things to help really facilitate the healing process. But what I can do is refer you and direct you to some good therapists if you're local. I know a few in Texas that I can kind of direct people to, or a resource that you can look up and find a therapist that's a better fit for you, that's a good fit for you. So if you have any questions, as always, guys, I always take questions. Please message me. Please email me, Tiffany at drtiffanyross.com. The quickest way you can get to me is Messenger. I typically reply back really quickly with my messengers. If you email me, I usually ask for about 24 hours to respond to my emails, because sometimes I have something to sift through. So but I do prefer that you message me directly. I hope you guys have had a wonderful day. Continue to have a magnificent day, and see us back here tomorrow. We tackle hard life topics with simple solutions. I don't know what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. We'll see. But rest assured, it's going to be something about mental health, and it's going to be something related to relationships. I love you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.